Seattle rain didn't fall. It pressed. A steady sheet against the glass walls of Carlisle Capital's high-rise tower, turning the skyline into smudges of gray and steel. 49 floors above the street, the building's newest biometric security upgrade designed to impress board members and intimidate competitors glitched. Somewhere between floors 48 and 49, the elevator gave a mechanical cough and stopped. Inside, two people stood in silence. Vivian Carlisle, CEO billionaire whispered Ice Queen in investor circles, had just ended a conference call where 3 board members suggested she might be the bottleneck for their IPO timeline. She hadn't blinked. She'd closed her tablet, exhaled once, and pressed the elevator button down. And now, stuck. With him. Eli Bennett stood in the far corner of the elevator wearing dark blue coveralls, an ID clipped to his chest, and cradling a crinkled pink gift bag like it was glass. The handles were fraying, and a small card dangled from a ribbon tied in a crooked bow. To Emma from Dad. He didn't make eye contact. Didn't clear his throat. Just checked his phone screen again. 11 p.m. and shifted his weight as if willing the elevator to move. Vivian tapped the call button twice. No response. "It's a new system," Eli said softly. "Still in test phase. Guess we're the lucky ones." His voice had a calm, worn quality, like someone used to delays but not defeated by them. Vivian didn't answer. She glanced at the gift bag. "Birthday, yes, ma'am." Her eyes flicked to the ID badge. "You work nights," he nodded. "Janitor. Floor 48, usually out of your way." Silence returned thick as the carpet underfoot. At 6:14 p.m., the elevator lights flickered. The panel beeped, then died. A low hum replaced the ambient music. For a moment, everything was still. Then a sound. A FaceTime ringtone. Eli's screen lit up. The contact read, "Emma." He hesitated, then answered. "Hi, sweetheart," he said, smiling with more warmth than he'd offered the room. A child's voice. "Dad, should I wait or blow out the candle now?" He blinked hard. "Wait for me, Em. I'm almost there. Just got stuck a bit. I'm on my way. Can you keep the candle lit a few more minutes? I'll try, but it's melting." Emma giggled. "And the pancake looks funny." He laughed, then lowered his voice. "I love you, okay? I'll be there before it cools." The screen faded to black. Eli sighed, tucked the phone into his chest pocket, and adjusted the pink bag again. Vivian had turned slightly away, pretending not to listen, but her eyes lingered on the crooked handwriting on the card. Something tightened in her chest just slightly before she could bury it again. At 6:19 p.m., the intercom crackled. "Apologies, folks. Minor system hiccup during a biometric update. We're releasing manual override. Hang tight." Minutes passed. The air inside grew warm. Eli unzipped the top of his coveralls slightly. Sweat traced the back of his neck. He didn't complain. He didn't fidget. He just stared at the little bag like it held more than ribbons and tissue paper, like it held his entire universe. The doors finally hissed open at 6:27 p.m. "Go ahead," he said, stepping aside for Vivian. She hesitated. Something about the way he stood, not just polite but almost reverent, made her pause. "Thank you," she said more softly than intended. He gave a small nod, then stepped back, watching the doors close. What Vivian didn't see, Eli turned and sprinted for the emergency stairwell. What Vivian didn't know, he had 33 minutes to get to Capitol Hill Community Center on foot, with soaked shoes and a daughter waiting with a single melting pancake candle. He ran, 27 floors down, dodging office staff apologizing breathlessly, through the lobby, past the security desk, into the rain. He cradled the gift bag inside his jacket like a torch. The ink on the card smudged. His breathing turned ragged. But at 6:58 p.m. he made it to the side door of the community center. Rain-soaked, heart pounding, and burst into the tiny art room where a girl with wide eyes and a crooked ponytail gasped. Daddy Vivian sat in the back of her limousine at exactly 7:00 p.m. The driver asked if she'd like to go home or to the Carlisle Foundation's dinner event. She didn't answer. Her fingers had brushed against something near her seat. A small, damp, wrinkled rectangle of cardboard. The ribbon still clung to it. To Emma from Dad. Her assistant buzzed her phone. Another meeting scheduled. Another donor needing reassurance. Another KPI dashboard waiting. But Vivian didn't move. She held the card in her hand. And for the first time in what felt like years, she didn't feel cold. The apartment smelled like vanilla cinnamon, and just a hint of burnt pancake batter. In a small third-floor walk-up tucked along a quiet street in Capitol Hill, Eli flipped the last pancake onto a chipped ceramic plate and called over his shoulder, "Birthday stacks ready." Emma raced from the bedroom wearing her paper crown, a lopsided creation made from old watercolor paper and glitter glue. Her socks didn't match. Her joy did. Eli placed the plate in front of her. 3 pancakes, not perfectly round, stacked with care and topped with a single candle already starting to droop. No frosting, no sprinkles, but enough maple syrup to count as celebration. "Okay, kiddo," he said, lighting the candle. "Make a wish." Emma closed her eyes tightly, her lips moving in a whisper. Then she opened them and blew. The flame flickered, danced for a second, and went out. Eli clapped like it was Carnegie Hall. Perfect form. Olympic worthy. She grinned and reached for the plastic fork. "You're the best dad." He shrugged with a smile, sipping black coffee from a mug that said, "Best Art Teacher." Alive the Alive had started to fade. There were no balloons, no music, no party hats or guests, but the room was filled with something more real than any of those warmth. Emma's gift had been a bracelet made of pink yarn, not just twisted but braided with clumsy knots and a plastic bead shaped like a heart. She had tied it around his wrist that morning, saying, "Now you wear me to work too." Later that afternoon, the rain returned. Not loud, not heavy a mist that painted the windows with gray. Eli sat on the living room floor surrounded by loose tools and a desk lamp disassembled in 3 parts. The thing had been flickering for weeks. Across the room, Emma sat at her little fold-up art table, crayons scattered like confetti. She flipped through a magazine she'd grabbed from the office building's lobby the day before, one of those glossy finance publications with too much perfume sample and not enough story. Her fingers stopped on a page. "Daddy," she said, holding it up. "Isn't this the lady from the elevator?" Eli leaned over. It was Vivian Carlyle. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes, hair pulled back like she was always walking into a storm and daring it to try her. "Yeah," he nodded. "That's her." Emma studied the photo, then turned back to her sketch pad. "What are you drawing now?" She smiled without looking up. "You'll see." At 5 p.m. A knock came at the door. Mrs. Morris, the elderly neighbor from 3B, stood outside holding a wrapped package that looked suspiciously like a hardcover book and a tin of sugar cookies wrapped in a red ribbon. "Well, well," she said. "Where's the birthday girl?" Emma darted to the door. "I'm 7 now." Mrs. Morris knelt to hug her, and already wiser than half the world. She handed her the gift. "This one helped me when I was a little girl. Now it's yours." Inside, Emma tore the paper, carefully revealing a worn copy of Charlotte's Web. She opened the cover and read aloud, "Some families are made of everyday choices." Her voice was soft, but it echoed in the little apartment. Mrs. Morris turned to Eli. "Your wife would be proud." He swallowed the lump in his throat. "Thank you." As night fell, Emma worked on her drawing while Eli returned to the stubborn desk lamp. The wiring was shot. He carefully stripped the ends and rewired the connections, mumbling to himself. Just as he clicked the switch and the bulb glowed steady, Emma held up her page. Done. It was a crayon sketch of 3 people under a rain cloud. 1 tall man holding a pink bag, 1 little girl with a crown, and 1 woman standing slightly apart holding a book. The woman had jet black hair and wore a blue coat just like in the magazine photo. Eli tilted his head. "That's us." Emma nodded. She looked lonely. So I put her in our picture. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Eli sat at the kitchen table sorting through a file folder of old papers, medical bills, lab reports. One, dated 4 months ago, had circled text mild fatigue recommend follow-up immune panel pending. He tapped a pen beside the note and wrote monitor closely. Next week, he stared at it for a long time, then tucked it back into the folder and shut it. His eyes drifted to the bracelet on his wrist, the pink yarn fraying already. He walked quietly to Emma's room. She was curled under her blanket, one arm around the stuffed elephant she'd named Captain Sprinkles. Her sketch sat on the nightstand. He leaned in and whispered, "Whatever happens, Em, I'll always be there. Every art class, every wish, every time." The next morning, Sunday started with music and pancakes again, her favorite ritual. But as she leaned forward to grab her fork, she paused. Her fingers twitched. She blinked once, then twice. "Daddy?" He was already beside her. "What's wrong?" Emma rubbed her temple. "I don't know. I felt a little dizzy for a sec. It's gone now." Eli smiled, relieved. "Probably just hungry. You didn't eat much last night?" She nodded and started eating again. He didn't see the way she blinked one more time. He didn't notice her sketch lines weren't as steady that morning. Not yet. The penthouse windows stretched from floor to ceiling, offering a pristine view of the Seattle skyline. Rain etched lazy trails down the glass, a moving canvas of clouds and cold light. Vivian Carlyle ran in place on her Peloton treadmill, a silent warrior against the morning. Speed, 8.5. Incline, 3. Heart rate controlled. Breath even. But her mind wasn't on the numbers. It was on a crumpled, water-stained gift tag. To Emma, from Dad. That tiny card had followed her all weekend, from the car to her leather satchel, from her bathroom counter to her nightstand. She hadn't told anyone about it. She didn't need to. It was just a janitor and a little girl, but the image of his face, tired, soaked yet fiercely alive, and the way he had clutched that bag, it stayed. 8:15 a.m. Conference room, A. The glass walls caught every shift in light, every motion. A boardroom made for power moves. Nate Chen, her executive assistant, stood at the front with a touchscreen clicker and a tightly organized deck on the screen behind him. Projected timeline for IPO on the Carlyle Community Growth Fund, he said Q3 is optimal. Market conditions are favorable, but investor confidence is sensitive. Vivian didn't blink. "And the number we're showing, 17% internal return estimate," Nate replied. "If we green light the real estate divestments." Damon Kroll, the CFO, cut in smoothly. "We can push it to 19 if we reframe the short-term debt as an operational bridge." Vivian arched a brow. "That's a polite way of saying we're dressing the books." Damon smiled like a man who always got away with it. "We're aligning optics with ambition." Across the table, Riley Park PR director and seasoned crisis whisperer adjusted her glasses. "Look, I'll spin the numbers." "But Vivian, there's a growing narrative fatigue around you." Vivian leaned back. "Meaning, you're the ice queen. Always right, never wrong. Always perfect, always polished. The media's losing interest." Vivian's jaw tightened. "You're suggesting I soften?" "Not soften. Humanize," Riley said. "Tell a story people can feel." Vivian stood ending the meeting with a glance at the time. The numbers will speak for themselves. That's the only language the market listens to. But even as she said it, that pink gift bag flickered in her mind. By afternoon, a small envelope sat untouched on her desk. Cream-colored, sealed, hand-addressed in her mother's cursive. It had arrived 3 days ago, forwarded from an assisted living facility in Oregon. Her mother's health had declined slowly then, suddenly. The letter had been written years ago, before the fog of illness set in. Vivian had not opened it. Instead, she shoved it beneath a pile of reports and turned to her side drawer, pulling out something else she hadn't looked at in years, a small silver music box. It didn't work anymore. She didn't care. She dropped it back into the drawer like a stone sinking into a pond. That night, the office was mostly empty. Vivian often stayed late, not because she had to, but because it was the only time the silence matched her pace. She wandered the 48th floor heels echoing lightly against marble. She paused near the corner desk where cleaning supplies had recently been cleared. A sketchbook bound in tan leather sat forgotten near the printer. She picked it up, flipped it open. What she saw stopped her breath. A delicate pencil portrait of a little girl, wide eyes, crooked ponytail, soft smile. It was Emma, she knew it without question. The details were so real she could almost hear the child's laugh. On the opposite page in gentle handwriting, "She's the proof love exists." Vivian's throat tightened. She turned the page, sketches of hand sunlight across wood floors, a half-finished drawing of a woman with tired eyes and a quiet strength. Her own. The style was unmistakable, elegant, intentional, but never arrogant. These weren't doodles. They were windows. Vivian blinked hard, snapping the book shut. She walked briskly to the nearest security intercom. "This is Carlyle," she said. "I need to know who was on night shift here last Friday." A pause. The guard's voice replied, "1 sec. Miss Carlyle. That would be Eli Bennett, janitorial services. He's usually on the overnight rotation floors 45 to 50. Thank you." She stood in the darkened hallway, sketchbook in hand. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass walls, not the icy Titan in heels, but something softer, more unsure. She walked to the 48th floor reception desk, placed the sketchbook gently down, and tore a piece of company stationery. In her careful, sharp script, she wrote, "Sketchbook safe at 48F reception." V. She didn't sign her full name. She didn't need to. Then she turned on her heel and disappeared into the elevator, leaving only pencil ghosts and the quiet hum of the building behind her. At 11:38 p.m., the building was a cathedral of silence. The city outside shimmered with rain-slicked streets and red taillights. Inside, most offices had long gone dark. Elevators waited quietly in their shafts, but on the 48th floor, light spilled from a single open pantry door. Eli Bennett stepped out of the service elevator, freshly showered, shirt tucked neatly into his navy coveralls. He moved quietly, the way someone does when the world isn't built for them to be noticed. The night supervisor had called him in early. "You left something last week. Reception's holding it." He'd already guessed what it was. And when the receptionist handed him the sketchbook with a note in crisp handwriting, "Sketchbook safe at 48F reception. V." He paused longer than he meant to. It wasn't just that it had been returned. It was how. The care. The intentionality. He turned the corner toward the service room but stopped dead in his tracks. Vivian Carlyle stood barefoot in the pantry, her heels discarded near the door. Her hair was pulled into a loose braid, blouse sleeves rolled to her elbows. The microwave hummed behind her, reheating what looked like a tray of untouched gala catering salmon over risotto, a small kale salad. Their eyes met. Neither moved. "Oh," she said, startled but composed. "Didn't expect anyone else here this late." Eli held up the sketchbook. "Just came to grab this." He hesitated, then nodded toward the food. "Long night," Vivian gave a thin smile. "Board meeting gala, then silence. My favorite course." He nodded. "Food waste breaks my heart." There was a long beat. Vivian gestured toward the small table near the wall. "I'll share if you're hungry." He blinked, surprised. "I'm good, thanks." She pointed to the sketchbook. I looked inside. I figured. Who wrote the line? "She's the proof love exists." Eli tapped the cover gently. "Me. Helps me sleep." Vivian tilted her head. "You write often." "Only when I can't afford therapy," he replied with a quiet smile. She huffed out something close to a laugh. "That makes two of us." At that moment, Eli's phone buzzed. He checked at the screen, lighting his face. "Emma." He answered, voice immediately warm. "Hey, Em. You should be asleep. Can I have pancakes for dinner? She asked upside down in the frame blanket over her head like a tent. Eli chuckled. Sweetheart, it's almost midnight. Vivian, who had wandered closer, caught sight of the screen. Emma, ponytail, big eyes, and the yarn bracelet still wrapped around her small wrist. She didn't speak, but something shifted. Eli noticed. Emma, someone wants to say hi. Vivian raised a hand slowly. Hello there. Emma blinked, then whispered, You're the elevator lady. Vivian smiled. Guilty. I drew you. Want to see? Emma asked, already digging for the sketch pad. Eli interjected gently. It's bedtime, Em. Pancakes tomorrow, okay? She sighed dramatically. Fine, but I want the fluffy kind, not the flat ones you made last time. Vivian, almost without thinking, said, What if I made them? Emma froze. For real. Vivian glanced at Eli, then back to the screen. Bring her by tomorrow evening. I'll prove I can outcook your dad. Eli looked genuinely stunned. You sure I've handled billion-dollar funds? I can flip a pancake. Thursday night, 7:12 p.m. The penthouse floor's test kitchen had never been used for anything other than photo shoots and caterer prep. Tonight it smelled like flour and vanilla. Emma stood on a step stool, hair in two tight braids, stirring a bowl with more excitement than precision. Vivian stood beside her in a silk blouse and jeans, rare civilian armor. Eli leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching them both. You know, you just caused a minor security event by bringing a child through that lobby, right? Vivian smirked. Riley approved it. Technically. Nate cleared the cameras. Emma pointed to the stovetop. Flip it now. Vivian tried. Failed. The pancake folded onto itself like a defeated napkin. Emma burst into laughter. You're worse than Daddy Traitor, Vivian muttered. The next batch turned out better. Slightly. The three of them sat around a tiny round table meant for quick executive coffees, now repurposed for late-night pancakes and jam. Vivian bit into hers and groaned. I rescind every insult. This is dangerously edible. Eli raised his mug. To the art of imperfection. Emma chewed thoughtfully, then asked, Do you eat alone? A lot. Vivian blinked. Pardon, Mom used to eat alone when she was sad. Do you? The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reverent. Vivian placed her fork down gently. Sometimes. Not because I want to. Just got used to it. Emma nodded like she understood far more than her age should allow. You can sit with us next time. Vivian's eyes burned briefly. She looked down at her plate. I'd like that. Far above them in a control room, they'd all forgotten a security camera blinked red. Riley Park, PR director, stood watching the footage on a monitor. Her hand hovered over the pause button. CEO Vivian Carlisle. A janitor. A little girl in braids. Laughing. Eating. Riley's face was unreadable. She didn't say a word, but she clicked Save Clip. Not for public release, not yet, but because in her world everything was a potential headline, and some headlines came with consequences. The whispers started small. A few glances across the break room. A Slack message here. A joke over coffee that lingered too long. By midweek, the chatter reached Damon Kroll's inbox, neatly summarized by someone from compliance. Subject line, Unusual Employee Engagement, CEO Level. He skimmed the note, a janitor, a child, pancakes, after hours. By Thursday morning, Damon stood outside Riley Park's office, arms folded, expression unreadable. Handle it, he said simply. Whatever it is, or might be, or might look like. Riley looked up from her screen, blinking. You're assuming it's a problem. Damon's tone was smooth. I'm assuming headlines aren't always interested in nuance. She didn't respond, just opened her PR crisis checklist and slid a folder across her desk. Vivian Carlisle knew the rumors before Nate even walked into her office with that look. The same look he wore during quarterly audits or when tech vendors missed deployment windows. She didn't ask. She just poured coffee and handed him the mug. How bad Nate sat. HR heard from legal. Legal heard from PR? Someone saw the footage from last night pancakes you the janitor's kid. She inhaled slow and even. And optics. Of course. The magic word. Vivian took a sip, then placed the mug down. Then let's make the optics unremarkable. By that evening, the community giving page for Carlisle Capital posted a new initiative supporting local creativity free art classes for underprivileged children. Open registration, public-facing, no names, no spotlights. Vivian sent the link to Eli with a short message, saw this and thought of Emma. Voucher attached. No strings, no spotlight. Just a class. Eli read the message 3 times. Then again. The PDF voucher was real. Professionally issued. No discounts, no branding. A true community initiative. Still, something in his gut wrestled with it. He read it once more before closing the screen. Saturday afternoon. The park near Lake Union was half drenched in golden light, half shadowed by slow clouds. Emma knelt in the grass beside her father-colored pencils lined up like tiny soldiers. Eli sat cross-legged sketchbook on his lap. He didn't speak. He just drew. Vivian stood 50 feet away near a bench reading emails on her phone. Her coat hung open. Her scarf danced in the wind. She looked less armored. Eli kept sketching. Emma leaned over to peek. That's her. He nodded. She looked sad. Eli paused. Maybe. She looks like when I miss Mom. He looked at his daughter. 7, but already walking through spaces no child should have to. She might be missing someone too, he said gently. Emma looked toward Vivian. I think she needs pancakes again. Later, when they walked toward the cafe for hot cocoa, Vivian approached. She had something in her hand, the sketchbook he'd once left behind. I meant to return this earlier, she said. He took it surprised. I thought you had. She smiled. I borrowed it again. She tapped the front cover where a small sticky note was now attached. In tidy handwriting it read, Keep drawing. The world needs this. V. Eli tucked it under his arm, unsure what to say. I saw the community art initiative, he finally said. I didn't name Emma. Or you. I know. That's why I might let her join. Vivian nodded once. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and excused herself. As she walked away, Emma tugged her dad's sleeve. I think she liked your drawings. I think she liked the pancakes more. That night, Emma sat at her desk sketching with surprising focus. Eli glanced over while folding laundry. You're really into that one. I'm drawing the park, the bench, the birds. Want me to sit with you? She nodded, then frowned. I dropped my blue. Eli reached to hand her a pencil but paused. Emma had gone still. Her hand trembled. The crayon slipped from her fingers. She blinked, confused. Emma. He crossed the room in 2 steps. Her face was pale. I feel weird, she whispered. Eli crouched, lifting her gently into his arms. Her head lolled onto his shoulder, not unconscious, but close. He didn't wait. He didn't question. He grabbed his phone keys and coat. As he carried her out the door, the sketchbook stayed open on the desk, one figure still unfinished standing beneath a cloudy Seattle sky. Hospitals have their own kind of silence. Not empty, not quiet, but heavy, pressurized, like a deep-sea current of hope and fear moving just under the surface. Eli sat with Emma in the pediatric emergency wing of Seattle Children's Hospital. The fluorescent lights were too bright, the walls too colorful. He held her hand, his thumb gently brushing over the yarn bracelet she still wore now, a little loose, slightly frayed. She leaned against him, too tired to sit upright. Her skin was pale lips tinged slightly gray. They'd arrived at 10:16 a.m. Blood was drawn by 10:34. At 11:51, a doctor walked in. Lab coat, clipboard, calm eyes that had delivered too many hard truths. Mr. Bennett Eli stood slowly. Yes. I'm Dr. Lucia Alvarez. I'm one of the pediatric hematologists here. May I speak with you privately for a moment? Eli looked at Emma. She was already half asleep. Whatever you need to say it here. She's strong. Dr. Alvarez nodded, then pulled up a rolling stool and sat in front of them. Emma's blood work shows signs of moderate aplastic anemia, she began gently. It means her bone marrow isn't producing enough new blood cells, red, white, or platelets. That's why she's been fatigued. It's also why she bruises easily and why her immunity is compromised. Eli's stomach twisted. How serious is it? It's progressive. Without treatment, it could become life-threatening. The good news is we've caught it early enough for treatment to begin immediately. He swallowed. Treatment, like what first line is immunosuppressive therapy. It helps calm her immune system, so her marrow has a chance to recover. It takes months, sometimes up to a year, and we monitor closely. If she doesn't respond, we consider a bone marrow transplant. But that depends on a match. Eli blinked slowly. A transplant, Dr. Alvarez nodded. Only if we reach that point. For now, we focus on treatment and monitoring. She glanced down at the folder. We'll also need you to sign a HIPAA release form to confirm you're her legal guardian and to consent to the treatment protocol. You have full rights to make decisions on her behalf. He nodded, lips pressed tight. I'm her dad. It's always been me. She handed him a clipboard with a stack of forms. We'll walk you through everything. Financial counseling, too. The treatment is costly even with insurance, but we'll explore every support route. Eli stared at the page. Words blurred for a second. He felt something inside him stretch. Not break, just stretch. The way steel does under too much weight. Then a voice behind him. Mr. Bennett. He turned. Vivian Carlyle stood just outside the sliding glass door. Her coat was still on. Eyes alert, but soft. She didn't enter the room, didn't step over the invisible boundary the hospital had built. I'm not here as CEO, she said quietly. I'm just here. If you need anything, I'll be in the hallway. Eli stared at her for a long beat, then gave the smallest nod. Thank you. 2 hours later, Emma lay curled in her hospital bed feline, snaking gently into her arm. A nurse had dimmed the lights. Eli sat in the corner reading the packet on immunosuppressive therapy for the third time. Vivian hadn't left the hallway. Emma stirred. Daddy, he rushed over, brushing hair from her face. I'm here. She blinked slowly, then looked toward the doorway. Is the elevator lady still there? He smiled faintly. I think so. Can she come in? He hesitated, then walked to the door, poked his head out. She wants to see you. Vivian stepped in quietly. The room suddenly felt smaller, warmer. Emma gave her a sleepy smile. Hi. Hi, sweetheart. Vivian approached slowly, kneeling beside the bed. You scared us a little. Emma whispered, I didn't mean to. Vivian reached for her hand. I know. There was silence. Then Emma asked softly, Are you scared? Vivian didn't lie. Yes. Grown-ups get scared too. We just get better at pretending. Emma turned her face to the pillow, then said in a tiny voice, I don't want to lose my drawings. Vivian blinked, caught off guard. You won't, I promise. Outside, Eli stood beside Dr. Alvarez at the consultation desk. We'll register her with the National Marrow Donor Program, she said. It's a nationwide database. But matches are unpredictable. Could be weeks, could be months. Eli nodded. We do whatever we have to. Dr. Alvarez paused. There's a window, Mr. Bennett. The treatment works best if we start within the next 2 weeks. It gives us a better shot at avoiding the transplant path altogether. How much? She hesitated. With insurance, you'll still be looking at between $20,000 and $30,000 in out-of-pocket costs. More if complications arise. We'll connect you with financial counseling. There are grants, but it takes time. Eli exhaled steady. Then we don't waste any. He walked back toward the room. His steps felt heavier now, but not slow. Just full. Like every step carried his entire world. Inside, Emma was already asleep again. Vivian sat nearby, silent. She looked up at him as he entered. "Tell me what to do." Eli didn't answer right away, then just stay. Somewhere across the city, the wind carried the sound of church bells. A reminder, a countdown. And in the hospital's quiet halls, a clock began to tick, soft, steady, and urgent. Vivian sat alone in the boardroom, sleeves-rolled hair tied back, a legal pad covered in half-sentences and crossed-out ideas. Her phone lay silent beside a steaming mug of untouched coffee. On the far side of the table sat a neatly bound proposal drafted with surgical precision by her legal team, outlining a 501c3 foundation. Its purpose, a medical support fund. Independent board. No direct affiliation to Carlyle Capital, no named beneficiaries, no public announcement. Just help. Structured, compliant, clean. Vivian had spent the entire weekend running scenarios, vetting legal exposure consulting ethics teams, even interviewing third-party grant managers. Everything about this proposal was by the book. No spotlight, no strings, no quid pro quo. And still she hesitated. By Tuesday morning, she was standing in the hospital hallway again, watching through the glass as Emma colored quietly on her tray table. A child's version of resilience, crayons, and quietness. Eli stepped out of the room with a nod. His eyes were tired but calm, that quiet storm calm he always carried. Vivian handed him the folder. "This is for Emma," she said. "Through a foundation, managed independently. You'd never owe me anything. It's structured to avoid conflict. I've had 3 compliance attorneys comb through it." Eli took it slowly, flipped through the pages, then closed it. "I can't." Vivian blinked. "Why?" He exhaled. "Because no matter how clean it is on paper, the world won't see it that way. They'll see a janitor taking handouts from a billionaire. And someday Emma will hear that version of the story. It's not a handout, Eli. I know that. You know that. But someday someone at her school will Google her name. Or someone at a job interview will smile too politely when her medical history shows up, and she'll wonder what she had to give up to get better." He handed it back gently. "I won't let her feel bought. Not even by kindness." Vivian looked at him, stunned by how steady he was, not angry, not insulted, just sure, and deeply, heartbreakingly protective. Back at headquarters, Nate caught up with her in the elevator. "Did you show him the foundation paperwork?" "Yes," and he declined. Nate nodded thoughtfully. "He's trying to protect her dignity. That's his currency." Vivian leaned against the wall. "I'm trying to save her life." "Then maybe don't offer to own the solution," Nate said. "Offer to share it." She glanced at him. "You want to help," he continued. "Then build something that lives beyond this girl. Take her out of the equation. Help many Emmas. That's how you win him. That's how you honor him." Wednesday, Carlyle Foundation website. Quiet update. A new headline. The Evelyn Grace Art Initiative, empowering children through expression. No photos, no press release, just emission-free art classes in under-resourced Seattle neighborhoods named after teacher, mother, and artist who once said, "Every child deserves a space to be heard, even when words fail." Eli saw the post on his phone the next morning. He stared at the name. Evelyn Grace. His late wife, Emma's mother. Vivian never asked, never told. But somehow, she knew. Friday evening, the hospital room buzzed with soft music as Emma added purple crayon streaks to her paper. Vivian arrived carrying a small box of new art supplies, not flashy, just thoughtful watercolor pencils, brushes, a sharpener shaped like a cat. "I heard you're the best colorist on this floor," she said. Emma giggled. "Maybe the second best." Vivian sat with her while Eli stepped out to stretch. They talked about unicorns and clouds and pancakes that looked like animals. Then Emma leaned closer. "My mom's name is Evelyn. Did you know that?" Vivian nodded. "I hoped I got it right." Emma smiled. "You did." But far from the hospital, something else was unfolding. A finance blogger known for sniffing out corporate hypocrisy posted a grainy security photo late Friday night. It showed a dim hallway, an executive kitchen, and a woman, unmistakably Vivian Carlisle, laughing beside a man in a janitor's uniform, a child's head visible in the corner. The headline read, "Ice Queen and the Custodian Pancakes Power and PR." The article speculated everything personal favors image rehab strategies, power imbalance scandals. No names, no direct accusations, just enough to spark 1,000 assumptions. By Saturday morning, the story had been shared to 2 major finance forums, 6 Reddit threads, and 1 celebrity gossip aggregator. Vivian's phone buzzed nonstop, so did Riley's. The PR storm had begun. Inside the hospital, Vivian stood near Emma's bed, unaware. Outside, Eli stared at his phone screen, that blurry photo, those words, the avalanche forming. He closed the screen slowly, shoulders rising, then falling. Not from fear, but from the quiet knowing that something sacred had just been dragged into a spotlight neither of them asked for. By 8 a.m., Carlisle Capital's glass tower felt colder than usual, not in temperature, but in tension. Riley Park stood at the front of the executive conference room, clicker in hand slides glowing behind her with headlines, mentions, and a chart. No one wanted to see social media sentiment trending downward. Vivian sat at the table, unreadable. Nate beside her, fingers steepled. Damon Kroll, sipping his black coffee, wore that smug neutrality that said, "I told you so," without saying a word. "We issued a holding statement last night," Riley announced, voice crisp. No names, no denial. Just this: Carlisle CEO visited a community art class as part of our broader initiative. No further comment on personal matters. A few murmurs. It bought us 72 hours, maybe. "But the photos still circulating," she added, clicking to a blurry shot from the blog, Vivian laughing in soft focus beside Eli and a little girl with crayons. Riley's voice dipped. "It's not just a PR issue anymore." She clicked to the next slide. "Confidential tip received, child safety concern sent to CPS." The room went still. Vivian spoke low. "What does that mean exactly?" Someone anonymous sent in a tip alleging potential exploitation. The language was vague, something about the use of a sick child for image laundering. Vivian's jaw clenched. That's not just a lie. That's cruelty. It's also enough to trigger a home visit under mandatory review protocol, Riley said. They'll be checking for emotional safety housing conditions and parental fitness. Nate looked up. When today? Possibly within the next few hours. Vivian stood without a word and walked out of the room. At 11:17 a.m., Eli opened the door of his apartment to find 2 people standing in the hallway. A woman in a gray blazer with a clipboard, a man with a polite smile and a DHS badge. "Mr. Eli Bennett." He nodded slowly. "That's me. We're from Washington State Child Protective Services. We received a report and need to conduct a welfare check on your daughter, Emma Bennett." Eli's throat tightened. "She's resting. She's been in and out of the hospital. We understand. This won't take long. We'd just like to ask a few questions, see her environment, and confirm her medical care is being appropriately managed." He stepped aside, jaw tight. Inside, Emma sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, sketching softly. Her coloring slowed when she saw the strangers. The woman crouched beside her. "Hi, Emma. I like your drawings. May I sit with you while I talk to your dad?" Emma glanced at Eli, who nodded gently. The agents checked the kitchen, the medicine cabinet, the bedrooms. They asked about her diet, her school routine, her doctors. Eli answered every question without snapping, without raising his voice. But something in his eyes grew dimmer with each minute. At 12:05 p.m., just as the agents were wrapping up a knock came at the door again. Mrs. Morris, their neighbor from 3B, stepped into the hallway holding a Tupperware of chicken soup. She stopped short. "What's going on?" Eli explained softly. Mrs. Morris didn't hesitate. "This man is the best father I've seen in 40 years. He sings bedtime stories. He makes birthday pancakes from scratch. He carries her to every appointment. If you're here because of that photo on the internet, then shame on whoever sent it." The agents took her statement seriously. One of them nodded. "Thank you, ma'am. Your testimony matters." They left shortly after, not hostile, not accusatory, just procedural. Eli closed the door behind them and leaned against it, arms folded, head down. Emma peeked out from the couch. "Did I do something wrong?" He crossed the room in 2 steps and wrapped her in his arms. "No, baby. You didn't. None of this is your fault." That night, Vivian sat in her penthouse office alone. She hadn't visited the hospital. Not today, not after the photo, not after the tip-off. Instead, she'd made one call to a private law firm specializing in child advocacy. A young associate named Jordan Lee had answered. Vivian gave them everything. The full story, the timeline. No spin, no angle. "I want you to represent the Bennett family," she said. "Pro bono. Full confidentiality. CPS, financial stress, legal paperwork. Whatever they need." Jordan hesitated. "May I ask, are you involved personally?" Vivian paused, then said, "Not anymore. I just believe in what they're fighting for." Tuesday, 8:42 a.m. Emma's blood draw came back. Dr. Alvarez stood by Eli's side in the hallway, charts in hand. Her hemoglobin has dropped significantly. The first treatment didn't stabilize it enough. "We're at the window." Eli blinked. "Window, the treatment protocol we discussed, the immunosuppressive therapy. The earlier we start, the better the outcome. But we need to begin this week." He nodded slowly. "How much? 24,000. That covers the full cycle plus her next 2 transfusions." He looked away, jaw tight. "I'll find it." She rested a hand on his shoulder. "Don't wait too long. Every day matters." Back in the hospital room, Emma slept with a crayon still in her hand. A soft purple line traced across her sketchpad where she'd drifted off mid-doodle. Eli sat beside her, holding the pro bono lawyer's business card in one hand and the insurance estimate in the other. He didn't know how to fight the system, but he knew how to fight for his daughter, and the clock was ticking. For Eli Bennett, selling his art had always felt like selling the pieces of his memory. Sketches were never just drawings, they were Emma's laughter, Evelyn's voice, quiet afternoons with a pencil, and too much grief to say aloud. But on Tuesday morning of week 7, he stood in front of a blank wall in a borrowed community center room and made a decision. "I'll do it," he told the volunteer coordinator. "I'll sell the sketches." She blinked. "Really, under one condition," he said. "No pity, no strings. Everything must be documented, receipted, and clean. I don't want my daughter's recovery paid for by guilt." Vivian kept her promise. She never stepped into the spotlight. Instead, she quietly rented a local gallery in Belltown, the kind of space that usually hosted abstract collections and $10,000 sculptures made of scrap metal. She negotiated a consignment contract for Eli, hired an independent CPA to oversee proceeds, and arranged a partnership with an online platform that allowed transparent tracking of every donation and sale. Each painting had a QR code. Each bid printed a receipt. Every cent was traceable. She never once attached her name, but she was there in the background coordinating lighting with the gallery owner, making sure the food truck outside served Emma's favorite grilled cheese, and confirming that the child-sized folding chair behind the guest book had a knit cushion and a handmade sign that read, "Reserved for the artist's muse." Opening night was a Seattle miracle. The rain held off. Families came with children. Local artists came to support one of their own. Nurses from Emma's hospital showed up in scrubs, wiping tears as they pointed at pencil sketches of Emma dancing in the kitchen or curled up reading Charlotte's Web. Each piece was signed only with Eli's initials. No sob story, no titles like Hope or Fight, just truth. Emma sat in her special chair, cheeks flushed pink, wearing a soft gray beanie and a bright red scarf the same color as the hero bracelets the gallery handed out at the door. A retired fire chief dropped $5,000 on a charcoal sketch titled Friday Light. A teenager with a buzz cut bought a print for $12 and told Emma my sister had leukemia. Your dad's drawings make me feel warm again. By 8:15 p.m., the gallery had raised over $26,000, just enough for the next round of Emma's treatment. Eli didn't say much. He just kept his arm around Emma and nodded when people complimented his work. At one point, Vivian stood across the room watching quietly with Nate beside her. "She has your grace," Nate said. Vivian shook her head. "No, she has Eli's courage. There's a difference." But while art filled one part of the city with hope, another part bristled with something colder. Damon Kroll, CFO of Carlisle Capital, stood in front of a financial report with a red marker circling inconsistencies in the Q2 projections. He wasn't looking for errors. He was manufacturing them. His plan was simple use: the PR backlash from the pancake scandal to cast doubt on Vivian's leadership, leverage investor nerves about community overreach, distract with sudden dips in fund performance, and call for a leadership review before the IPO window closed. The timing was precise. He had the data tweaked. He'd prepped a whisper campaign. And critically, he'd rerouted internal accounting emails through a dummy folder labeled Community Uplift Reports. It would all look like Vivian had overpromised, underdelivered, and compromised fiduciary duty, a perfect storm. Until Nate caught the scent. Late Thursday night, week 8. Nate sat in his office, scrolling through a data trail Vivian had never asked for, but he always monitored. One expense report didn't match its internal allocation. The line item for the Evelyn Grace Art Initiative showed a negative adjustment when it shouldn't have touched operational capital at all. He dug deeper, found inconsistencies, mismatched authorizations. 3 names flagged. One, recurring sender, DK Rawl Carlisle, ... Capital Nate didn't go to Vivian first. He went to Riley. This is more than bad math, he told her. It's sabotage. Riley, who'd once built her career containing scandals, now stared at the screen with quiet fury. He's trying to pin it all on her, bury the foundation, dismantle everything she's built. Then we bury him with his own paper trail. But even as they plotted damage control, a new message arrived that neither of them was prepared for. At 9:47 p.m., Eli received a notification from Seattle Children's Hospital. A single-line update from Dr. Alvarez No matched donor found through NMDP. Preparing protocol for Phase 2. Immunosuppressive therapy must begin within 5 days. Eli read it, then again. The room spun just slightly. He didn't cry. Not then. Not yet. He walked to Emma's bedroom, sat beside her bed, and watched her sleep. She clutched her sketchbook, even in dreams. Outside, the gallery still glowed with fading warmth. But inside Eli's chest, something dark and urgent began to rise. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. Vivian Carlisle hadn't entered the attic in over 20 years. It was the only room in her penthouse that remained untouched, a locked storage space tucked behind a steel utility door, hidden like a scar. But on that gray Saturday morning in March, something inside her shifted. Something brittle cracked. She climbed the narrow staircase barefoot, the hardwood cold beneath her. With trembling fingers, she turned the old key in the lock. The door creaked open. Dust hung in the air like memory. Stacks of boxes, a broken easel, a faded duffel bag from her brief ballet phase, and then, in the far corner, a shoebox wrapped in hospital discharge papers. Her mother's handwriting still intact. Vivian dropped to her knees. Inside the box were photos her mother in a hospital gown, eyes sunken but smiling. A young Vivian clinging to her side, wearing 2 big headphones and a determined frown. At the bottom of the box, folded carefully into thirds, was a letter. The seal had never been broken. Vivian stared at it for a long time before she peeled it open. My darling girl. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. But I need you to know something that the world may never tell you. You were the reason I fought every single day, even the bad ones, especially the bad ones. Don't let loneliness harden you. Don't turn pain into armor. Love anyway. Love anyway. Mom Vivian didn't cry. Not at first. But 20 minutes later she was still on the floor, her arms around the box like it was oxygen, like it was the only thing tethering her to the woman who'd taught her how to survive but never how to grieve. 2 hours later, Nate and Riley stood in Vivian's office watching as she moved like a storm with a purpose. We're activating both tracks, she said, voice steadier than steel. First, I'm endowing a community trust, not a fund, not a vanity project. A trust with independent governance. No Carlisle branding. The goal is to support pediatric families like Emma's. Needs-based, no media. Riley blinked. That's real. That's not PR. It's the point, Vivian snapped, then softened. I've spent too long building things that look good instead of things that do good. Nate nodded slowly. And the second track, Vivian turned her laptop around. The email thread was open. Screenshots, time-stamped receipts, financial manipulation, all leading back to one man. Damon's fraud isn't just unethical, it's criminal. And if we let this slide, everything we've built means nothing. Riley leaned in. I'll prep a confidential memo to the Independent Audit Committee. No leaks, no spin. Just facts. Let the numbers speak, Vivian said. And when they do, I won't be the one buried. That evening, Vivian stood outside Eli's apartment building in Capitol Hill, holding nothing but a plain manila envelope. She didn't text ahead. She didn't bring flowers. She knocked once. Eli opened the door wearing a soft t-shirt and yesterday's worry. Behind him, Emma's laughter echoed faintly from the living room. Vivian cleared her throat. I owe you more than one apology. He said nothing, just stepped aside. They sat at the kitchen table, the envelope between them like a ceasefire flag. I let PR spin too long, Vivian said. I thought silence protected you. I see now it exposed you instead. Eli nodded slowly. I didn't need silence. I needed truth. She swallowed. Then here it is. I don't want headlines or credit or permission. I just want to stand beside you and Emma outside the spotlight but inside your story. If you'll let me. For the first time in weeks, Eli didn't seem guarded. Just tired. Just human. You're asking to stay, he said. Yes. But on your terms. He leaned back in his chair, exhaled. Then we write them down. Clearly. Boundaries. She smiled, small. Lawyered boundaries. Eli stood and retrieved a folder from the counter. Inside was a draft agreement prepared by Jordan Lee, the child advocacy attorney. Shared decisions, medical access, no press without consent, financial walls, emotional clarity. Sign it, he said. Then we build from there. Vivian picked up the pen and signed. Later that night, back at the hospital, Dr. Alvarez stood at the end of Emma's bed, reviewing the latest lab results. The numbers weren't perfect, but they had shifted. Something's opened, she said. There's an updated trial protocol, immunosuppressive therapy with a lower risk delivery. Less invasive, still experimental, but promising. Eli looked up. What's the catch? A short window. 2 weeks, maybe less. If we start now, we may not need to escalate to a transplant, but we'll need full coordination insurance labs outpatient access. He looked at Vivian, who now stood just behind him, not hovering rooted. We'll make it happen, she said. For once, he didn't doubt her. In the corner of the room, Emma stirred. Her voice was soft, groggy. Did someone draw the clouds tonight? Vivian stepped forward. Why do you ask? Emma smiled faintly. Because the moon looks like it's peeking through, like it's shy. Eli chuckled. Maybe it's waiting for someone to say hello first. Vivian bent down beside her. Then, let's say it together. Outside the hospital window, the clouds parted, and for a moment the world felt still, not because the storm had passed, but because they were finally standing in it, together. The two rooms couldn't have been more different. One glowed sterile white with the quiet beep of monitors and the hush of hushed voices. The other shimmered with chrome and glass and the sharp clicks of expensive shoes against a marble floor. But both were preparing for battle, and both held the future of someone Vivian Carlisle had come to love. Thursday morning. Seattle Children's Hospital. Emma was tucked under a soft lavender blanket, her tiny frame almost lost in the folds. Her hair had begun to thin from previous treatments, but she wore her favorite beanie gray with a red heart stitched by Mrs. Morris. Eli sat beside her, holding her hand with one and a children's book with the other. "Okay," he said gently, Chapter 5. "This was your mom's favorite part." Emma nodded, lips pale but smiling. "The spider says something funny, right?" Eli grinned. "She says, 'With the right words, you can save a life.'" From the doorway, a nurse entered with quiet steps. "Mr. Bennett, we're ready when you are. The team's prepped." Dr. Alvarez followed her clipboard, already signed off. "Today's protocol includes ATG and cyclosporine. Her vitals are strong and we'll monitor every hour. The team is hand-picked." Eli exhaled. "She's brave." Dr. Alvarez smiled. "So are you." Vivian stood back in the hallway, not intruding, not yet. But Emma caught her. "Are you coming with us?" Vivian stepped forward. "I'll be right outside. Always." Emma reached over and pressed something into her hand. A red string bracelet, loosely woven with a single plastic bead. "Like Daddy's," she whispered. Vivian stared at it, and for a moment forgot how to breathe. Meanwhile, Carlisle, Capitol 47th floor, boardroom. The Independent Audit Committee gathered at 9:00 a.m. sharp. Nate was already seated, files neatly stacked. Riley had prepared the external counsel and kept press inquiries frozen with a holding line. "We're focused on transparency and accountability. No further comment at this time." Vivian entered in a navy pantsuit, her hair pulled back, eyes calm but coiled like a spring. She didn't start with pleasantries. She started with evidence. Over the last 6 months, CFO Damon Kroll redirected line-item allocations from the Carlisle Community Impact Fund into temporary side pockets used to inflate liquidity margins. He then used those projections to manipulate early IPO forecasts and approve internal bonuses. She clicked the first slide. "Here's the round-trip cycle." Click. "Here's the email he sent authorizing it under a dummy code labeled Community PR Buffer." Click. "Here's the bank routing showing the funds being returned post-reporting window to make it look clean." Click. Silence. One board member cleared his throat. "You're saying this wasn't just bad optics. This was fraud." Vivian looked directly at him. "I'm saying it was betrayal." A murmur followed. Outside the conference room, Riley fielded a call from a journalist asking about the exhibit fundraiser. "No comment on the family," she said firmly. "But we're proud of the trust being formed, and the shareholders will be briefed directly." Back at the hospital operating room, 10:22 a.m. Emma was under anesthesia now. Machines beeped softly. Monitors pulsed a steady rhythm. Nurses moved with practiced grace. Dr. Alvarez stood at the head of the table. "Let's begin." Behind the glass, Eli sat with a hospital chaplain and Jordan Lee, the child advocacy attorney. They didn't talk, just watched. Vivian sat beside Eli but said nothing until he passed her a folded piece of paper. "It's new," he said. "Wrote it last night." She opened it. A poem, handwritten soft lines, ink slightly smudged. She doesn't ask to be brave, but she wears courage like a color, not red, not loud, just soft and honest, like a whisper that steadies your hand. Vivian blinked fast. "She'll hear this. Later." Eli smiled faintly. "That's the plan." Back at Carlisle Capitol, 11:43 a.m. The board voted. Unanimously. Damon Kroll was suspended pending legal proceedings. His email access was revoked. His badge was deactivated. Vivian didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She simply nodded and walked out. Riley met her in the hallway. "It's done," she said, "but we're going to get media pushback. Anonymous leaks spin the usual tactics." "Let them spin," Vivian said. "We have receipts." Later, that night, Emma's room. The treatment was done, successful by initial measures. The worst part, waiting, had begun. Emma was groggy, drifting in and out, but the machines hummed steady. Eli sat at her bedside reading again, this time from a small leather-bound notebook. Not a children's story. His own words. Vivian stood just outside the door watching. Her hand rested on something in her coat pocket. She pulled it out. A small silver music box. The one from her childhood. The one she hadn't touched in years. She placed it gently on the hallway bench, hesitated, then turned the key. For the first time in a decade, it played. The soft, tinny melody floated through the corridor, imperfect but real. Eli looked up and met her eyes through the glass, and smiled. At 6:04 a.m. the next morning, Dr. Alvarez entered with the first test results. She didn't say anything at first, just handed Eli the printout. The numbers were small, but they had moved, upward. Progress, hope dressed as data. And for the first time in weeks, Eli exhaled a full breath. Vivian looked at the monitor, then at Emma, who slept peacefully. "She's turning a corner," Dr. Alvarez said. "It's still early." "But it's there," Vivian whispered. "So is she." 1 year later, the sea outside their new home wasn't loud. It breathed, gentle, steady, like a reminder you've made it through. Emma sat on the porch swing legs, kicking softly beneath her sketch pad balanced on her knees. Her hair, once patchy and thin, now curled just below her ears in soft tufts. A halo of regrowth. Inside, the kettle whistled. Eli leaned into the doorframe, watching her with quiet awe. He still didn't take mornings like this for granted. Probably never would. Dr. Alvarez's words still echoed from 3 weeks ago. "She's stable. The marrow's holding. Blood work consistent. We're seeing sustained remission." Eli hadn't cried then. He waited until he was alone on a walk near the shoreline, wind in his face, and let it come. Their little house sat on a quiet stretch outside of Bainbridge, just close enough to the city for hospital visits, and just far enough to feel like healing had its own zip code. The Community Art Trust, now fully operational and governed by a diverse board, had helped fund treatments for over 40 families in Washington. Eli and Vivian were never listed as officers or founders. That was the point. It wasn't about them. Every quarter, the trust released an open report. Transparent, donor-backed, impact-driven. It became a quiet model for how corporations could support without controlling. And it started with one little girl's sketchbook. On Saturdays, Eli opened the doors to his small weekend studio, a low-ceilinged space with white walls covered in crayon murals. The kids came early. Emma helped clean the brushes. Vivian sometimes brought muffins. He didn't call it class. He called it color time. There were no grades, no critiques, just paper, paint, laughter. Vivian, meanwhile, had reshaped her entire work life. She shifted to a hybrid model, something she once deemed unthinkable. And every day at 6 p.m., sharp, she shut her laptop. Eli would joke, "Who are you, and what did you do with Vivian Carlisle?" She'd just smile. "She's still here. She just learned how to go home." Friday nights had become sacred. Not formal dinners, not reservations, just pancakes, breakfast for dinner, always, every Friday. Eli flipped batter with Jazz playing low in the background. Vivian chopped strawberries. Emma stood on her stool and sang off-key wearing her superhero apron. This, Emma said one night, biting into a syrup-soaked stack, is my favorite kind of dream. The kind you get to eat. In early September, as the breeze began to carry autumn in its teeth, Vivian did something she hadn't done in decades. She opened the last sealed envelope from her mother. They sat together in the living room, Eli, Emma, and her fire-crackling teacups warming their hands. She read aloud, her voice only wavering once. "Love is not a weakness, Viv. It's a doorway. Open it again and again, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because on the other side of that pain is the life you're meant to live." When she finished, Emma whispered, "Did she know about us?" Vivian smiled gently. "I think. She hoped for us." She framed the letter, hung it just above the mantel beside one of Emma's newest drawings, a beach, a house, 3 figures holding hands under an umbrella. Riley, ever the strategist, published a public case study later that fall when transparency leads crisis boundaries and the community win. She detailed how the crisis around Vivian was navigated with integrity, how Damon Kroll was formally indicted for securities fraud, and how Carlisle Capital's board regained public trust without sacrificing its humanity. The final paragraph read, "Sometimes the smartest strategy is doing the right thing, not because it makes headlines, but because it doesn't have to." One cool September evening, just before sunset, Eli and Vivian stood by the edge of the porch watching Emma dance through the sand in her rain boots. She twirled arms wide, spinning like joy itself. Vivian leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. Eli reached into his pocket, pulled out a small worn key tied with a red ribbon. He held it out. She stared, then smiled. The key had one word engraved, "Home." "I don't want to change your name," he said softly. "Just the habit of being alone." Vivian didn't answer. She didn't have to. She just took the key and slid it into her palm. That night, after Emma fell asleep, a crayon still clutched in her hand, Vivian sat in the kitchen and wound the old music box, the same one from her childhood, the same one that once sat in silence for years. It played now, clearly. The notes floated down the hallway through the open door where Eli slept and out onto the porch where the wind carried them toward the waves. Emma's latest drawing was taped to the fridge. A family of 3 under a golden umbrella with rain falling soft and warm around them. Below, she'd written, "Seattle rain isn't cold when you're loved." Some gifts don't come in pink paper. They bloom from choices. Quiet ones, brave ones. The kind you make with your whole heart every single day. Sometimes healing doesn't come all at once. Sometimes it comes in quiet moments, in pancakes on a Friday night, a music box that plays again after years of silence, or a child's voice reminding us that rain isn't always cold when you're loved. Have you ever witnessed a story like this, a moment of unexpected kindness, a stranger who became family, or a fight that turned into a future? We'd love to hear from you. Share your story in the comments below, and let us know where in the world are you watching from. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that heal, that inspire, that remind us of the quiet power of love, community, and second chances. Thank you for spending your time with us. We're honored to be part of your day. Until next time, stay kind and keep choosing the little things that make a big difference.